Welcome to Board Ghost, a story broadcast with games as the engine.
If living is a highway, then heaven is a bus stop. Been waiting for a minute there, but has it been forever? 'Cause dying don't...
We believe you're out there, hungry for stories for shared experiences. We can't see you, can't hear you, yet we will play for you. This site's offering is a continuation of our game of the Skeletons. To learn how we generate stories using the game of the Skeletons, go check out our rules primer. You can pick up Skeletons at Bully Pulpit Games. It is by designer Jason Morningstar, who also created the game Fiasco. I'm one of your humble players, John Holt. With me is...
Ken Breese.
Returning.
I'm Tim Rodriguez.
All right, and also returning...
Chris Littler, not so humbly playing for you.
All right. Thank you guys for coming back on. So let's roll through who we are and what's been happening to us so far. Ken, why don't you start us off?
My character is Headless, the skeleton. Headless has no head. However, he does have a tortured past. Last time, we were realizing that he was some sort of priest or worshiper of the watchful specter god, of which a mural is depicted in our tomb. Our tomb is underwater, inverted pyramid, where the top of that pyramid, that flat plane, is the only thing sort of sticking above the water, just a little bit. Headless has been able to evoke powerful magics using his holy symbol, and he seems to have some sort of tortured past where his family was torn asunder by demonic sea urchins called Uni-Oni.
I'm playing Big Head. Sort of seems to have emerged as kind of nominally the leader of this ragtag group of defender guardian skeletons. Big Head remembered that whoever they were called the Humble in description of kind of their accomplishment. Big Head has collected the blood of intruders in its defense via this amulet that it wears, and as the amulet collects the blood of intruders, it kind of scars Big Head, and so Big Head has been developing all of these maddening bone spurs all over.
Though we found out last time that Headless created the amulet that Big Head wears.
That's true.
Lovingly created it.
Rusted Shirt is also in this tomb with these chuckleheads. We found out that Rusted Shirt has some sort of history keeping time or keeping a beat. He's kind of like a metronome, and maybe was kind of a simpleton in the past. He was kind of out of control with his emotions, and Big Head came in a big way to kind of like soothe him as a leader of what was happening back before everyone was dead. He's got a bent spear, and he bangs it on things, and every once in a while he loses his shit and just tries to keep the defilers out.
So I am playing Crawler, who is one of the slaves who built this tomb and hates it, and who was bent into servitude as well to the bent god, this god of slaves, who has earned his own mural inside the tomb opposite the giant wall of glass that looks out on the dark depths of the ocean.
And the sharks, there's lots of sea life
Lots
out
of
there,
sea life.
we should mention.
So yeah, and so let's describe our tomb, right? We're in an inverted pyramid that's just a platform in the ocean, and with water just covering it, lapping at its edges, and that terminates at a point deep undersea over a trench, and hanging from chains just beneath this chamber at the point of the tomb is a sarcophagus, a coffin, and in this room there's one window of glass that looks out on the sea. There's two egresses that spiral up into these little air pocket chambers that allow you to enter. Mm-hmm. And there's a mosaic of water on the floor, and this glass panel that lets you look at the sarcophagus. There's a pile of bones of those who were forced to pass on with whoever is the person buried here. There's also a bookshelf full of old tomes and canoptic jars, and a mosaic to the bent god and his worship facing the window. And thus far, we have dealt with a robber who wasn't quite up to the archaeology that you need to deal with skeletons like us.
Hipster robber, man. Hipster Tomb Raider.
Yeah. Inexperienced, overconfident.
And we also dealt with some wetlands, which are these small carnivorous, gross
Sea monkeys.
sea
Giant
monkeys
sea
things.
monkeys. Yeah, fleshy sea monkeys.
The last thing that came in was the
Unioni.
Unioni,
Unioni?
and he was crushed eventually, not before prickling his way into the center of the tomb.
That's right. And in the center of the tomb, that is where Crawler was very much able to make his will felt as he begins destroying parts of the tomb in the service of destroying the intruders.
Mm-hmm.
Crawler's playing a double game.
Yeah, and something happened to Crawler where Crawler's losing his mobility.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
right.
but
The magic of the tomb.
Whether it was the sacrilege or just simply using his will or too much of his own strength, he's weakened and sluggish now, but still has the strong compulsion to defend the tomb.
And a really gnarly knife.
We left off that we are going to have a century pass, so we're going to sit in silence deep in our watery cave or tomb and listen to the nothingness of time. Arise and
and
protect the tomb, skeletal guardians!
Get it right or pay the price, skeleton.
Seriously.
Come on.
Get it together.
All right, so who are we being intruded by?
A family seeking shelter. An impact shudders the tomb as you awaken and feel called to action. The oceans have receded. And now, in the middle of the sea, there is a great monolith that ships normally know to avoid, but a storm has stirred the waters and a ship has crashed. A family enters, a mother and two children, a boy and a girl.
Have the waters receded so much that our window now looks onto air, or does our window still
No,
look
that
underwater?
still looks underwater,
Still
but
looks
it's
underwater.
substantially brighter
Yes.
outside. And you notice that the sharks don't come up this high nearly as frequently as they might otherwise.
And do we know where the family is coming in, which entryway, or have they
This-
made their own entryway by crashing into the
No,
monolith?
the southern entryway was exposed and obvious.
Do they have to climb up to get into it, or is it
It's
like
it's
kind of
actually-
the water's
It's
lapping?
basically the water's lapping against it, so it's no longer as much of an air pocket as
Exposed.
just a door
based
Yeah.
on the tides kind of
Mhm.
thing, yeah.
Yeah, except it's not tides. This is substantial. Where it was easily 20 to 30 feet below the surface, this is much lower. Something has happened to make the world's water disappear.
And somehow this pyramid floats, it like stays where it should have been, where it was told to stay.
Yeah. Magically, somehow it
How are
continues
these
to-
people dressed?
In tight-fitting clothes, what we might normally describe as wetsuits, but they're not wetsuits. They're daily outfits made of a synthetic fabric of some sort, interlaced with little lights that glow. We're in the future, skeletons.
Rusted Shirt's head spins on his neck, kind of turns around, points in the direction of of the sounds of a mother and the children. They're kind of talking to each
Do
other.
we know how old these children are approximately? Are we talking about preteens, teens?
They gotta go, Ken. Does it matter?
Is one a baby?
Yeah. Oh, it matters.
Does it matter?
Oh, it matters.
They're defiling our tomb.
Yes, they are.
They gotta go.
These damn babies.
The sister is older and is roughly a teenager.
Got it.
The brother is young, maybe a toddler, perhaps 3.
And so Big Head isn't moving. Where is Big Head right now?
Big Head is cleaning. The crack was not fully repaired, and over time has been spidering further out and again.
Yes, the crack in
And
the glass on the ground.
From about 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Big Head was not able to use its magic to repair that crack. And so in defense, that crack must be repaired. And so Big Head perhaps used up its magic, trying and being awake to try and clean under the stone. It's kind of a Sisyphean task here.
Headless arises from his kneel that he's normally in. He's kneeling in front of the watchful specter mural. And as he arises, Headless, telepathically, you can hear him saying, I have avenged you, Onset. Now, to clear these flesh bags from my tomb. And he again begins to clatter, though slowly, towards the south entrance.
All right. And yet Crawler struggles to pull themselves from the pile of bones and tattered fragments of remnants of these sacrificed, and begins to almost like it's a partial crawl now to move, like a true, not just a loping four-legged, like hands to the floor, feet to the floor, kind of bent, but now like pulling himself along with his arms and legs, not giving help to the effort as much. So almost dragging his lower torso up and using the dagger to score the floor and gain extra grip where his nails don't, and sort of like leering, skull-like face as he etches the floor with his dagger, pulling himself towards the south, up the passage. While even though you're moving slow, Headless, he still lags behind.
Oh, yeah.
Rusted Shirt looks over at Big Head as if anticipating some sort of instruction, and sensing none, kind of goes slackjaw and then starts bounding towards the sound of the woman and her kids banging his bent spear in time against the wall. Anything he can hit against, gaining more and more momentum as he goes towards the south entrance.
Dang, 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 dang,
Is
dang,
this
dang, dang,
resounding
dang, dang,
as
dang.
it did before,
Mhm.
or is it just?
I think he's not doing as good of a job. He's a little too out of control of himself to do the resounding bangs. He's more just following his skeletal instinct.
There's just dissonant sounds that almost cancel out the reverberant sounds. Yeah.
These sounds get lost in the thunderous environment outside. The storm is still raging. This young boy is crying as this happens, and they do not notice the warnings of Rusted Shirt.
Of course they don't. Headless, you moving in with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Headless is definitely moving in with Rusted Shirt. The telepathic communications continue as Headless begins to chant again. Call the corridor. Call the halls. Call calls.
Rusted Shirt is haul the corridors, call the halls, call the corridors, haul the halls. Bang, 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 bang.
I think at this point, Headless starts using his mace to start banging on a wall as well. But less frequently. It's more like a kong, kong. Just sort of like this more very infrequent bang.
Yeah. Kind of like on the 2 and 4.
Yes, if you will.
Would you say?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, maybe on the 2 and 4.
And Crawler just methodical, just keeps dragging himself up the corridor, up the passageways.
Who gets there first?
Probably
Rusted Shirt seems like he's going pretty
Yeah,
fast.
going pretty quick.
He shambles in.
They notice as the older sister kind of shrieks as you shamble in, and the mother says something in a language you do not know and holds out something in her hand. What do you do?
Rusted Shirt looks down at the woman's hand, pauses.
It looks like a gift.
Rusted Shirt's head tilts,
Just see a slack jaw, just sort of.
and he whacks it out of her hand.
Her hand goes flying, and the item, which is a small bundle, flies away. And it's a package of incense and coins, which you might recognize as a common gift for the dead in some cultures.
Well, Rusted Shirt can't smell, right? You can't smell, guys,
Nope.
right? No one's smelling. Coins really have no interest in the face of his blind fury. So I think he has to just keep shambling at them, making terrifying sounds and swinging his bent spear wildly at them.
Yeah, Headless comes in second, striding in a much more measured and stately way, moving towards the teenage girl who is just sort of shouting and screaming in fear. Without breaking stride, brings his mace down in an arcing chop, trying to break her head or clavicles.
The girl is holding her younger brother, and as you swing over, she notes the telegraphed movement and rolls away.
Yeah.
And you hear a splash as like she's in the water, trying desperately to stay above the surface while paddling with one arm and holding her brother with the other arm. But she is out of the tomb.
The shape of her in the water, the way that she's splashing and holding her brother, reminds Rusted Shirt of this thing that we are protecting, this thing that is inside the sarcophagus that we must have thought was a person, but is actually some sort of sea creature, some sort of the bones of something that came out of the water that we as a culture were fetishizing, we're thinking was some sort of like water god. The way that it moves reminds Rusted Shirt of the very reason that he's here, and he's shocked. He has a moment of pause.
The mother is stunned by this whole tableau, and Crawler, the back cracks as he raises himself and strokes the mother's hair.
Ah!
And remembers watching the sarcophagus being lowered into a similar like watery pit before the entire pyramid was submerged, and remembers holding one of the wives of the sea god and pulling his knife across it. For he was the governess. He was the one to send the sacrifices along with the sea god. And he pulls his knife across the mother's throat.
Headless has been ruminating on his family that was killed by Uni Oni and feeling very justified that he has redeemed them and avenged them by helping to kill these Uni Oni who are here. He's also realizing that was early on in his living days. That after that, he gave himself fully in all ways, physically, mentally, spiritually, to this God, and that he is the avowed, a proven holy warrior, as his mace goes and this sort of bright bluish flame is just emanating from the mace, and he is just continuing to chase this girl and her brother.
Who are in the pool.
They are. He does not get into the pool, but he is definitely whipping his mace back and forth, trying to ward them off or scare them off.
The mother turns to face you, Crawler, as you've stood, perhaps almost in defiance of your god, it seems, and with the breath that she has remaining, and while the blood seeps out her throat, the words she speaks you do not understand, but the intent is a curse.
Rusted Shirt is trying to put together the fact that they are protecting this thing that should be in the sarcophagus, yet it somehow seems to be right in front of him, writhing in the water, and starts trying to grab the girl's leg so that he can pull her back towards where she should be, where it should be, perhaps in vain.
The girl seems to have found some sort of handhold just outside of your reach and has one fist locked in the wall and the little brother in her arms as the storm rages. You'd normally expect the tomb sharks to come, the activity, the frothy blood activity to quickly settle any last remnants of this defiling. But the tomb sharks swim deeper than this, and so they do not come.
They're not here to finish the job.
And you watch all through the storm. The day comes, night falls again. Eventually, you watch the girl fall asleep and the little boy slips from her arms. There's a splashing. You could reach the boy if you wanted.
Seems like it's something about the uncoupling of them breaks the spell. They've lost they don't seem like the thing that I wanted. They become two separate entities.
The boy slips under the water and does not resurface.
Rusted Shirt turns around and starts shambling back towards the middle of the room.
The mother's hand reaches out from the lip of the pit towards the girl.
The girl weakly reaches back.
And that's when two pairs of skeletal arms, reach for her and grasp at her arm and pull her past the lifeless body of her mother out of the water.
You hear a crack as her other hand is broken from its hold in the wall. She has no energy left to fight back.
And flaming mace and knife flash as they fall.
We did it!
We killed those poor family. We did it.
We stopped them.
Stopped them from defiling our tomb.
For a second, I thought we wouldn't, but then we did. Oh,
That was lucky.
man.
That was lucky. That was close.
Fuck. We almost did not get to kill that family.
Yeah.
As Crawler drags the bodies back to the pile and nestles in with them, like one on either side, they remember that they were this priest of the bent god, ordained the governess for their servitude, in servitude. And as much as they hated the tomb, they really did love their job.
Love sacrificing people.
And they loved the people, like they loved just everyone they put under the knife so much.
Yeah, I love them.
Crawler, you're pretty creepy.
Yeah.
Creepy Crawler.
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 Headless has realized what his by name was in life that describes his greatest accomplishment. The Avowed, a proven holy warrior.
A rusted shirt figured out whose bones rest within the great sarcophagus.
Oh, yeah.
It's the sea god.
Sea god.
Yeah, which I just imagine is the most pathetic looking little thing. Just a malformed, mutated little creature that we all got together and decided was
Was our god.
was our god.
That's amazing. Need the glory fades or god laughs.
All right.
The place where a skeleton stands watch is covered in debris and impassable. I have an idea for this.
Yeah, throw it down.
I think that in the time that has passed and Big Head's wakefulness, Big Head has finally managed to destroy the stone in the century of cleaning and compulsion. I think this debris blocks the altar where Headless kneels.
Yeah, I also like the idea, the ship sort of crashing into the south entrance, that also has an effect. We'll see how much time goes by, but I feel like the south entrance is starting to crumble in on itself a bit.
All right, so roll us on time.
This is centuries.
Oh, good.
Conveniently, this also chooses one on the world's crumble or time devours. Centuries is, I believe it's 3 minutes.
Arise and protect the tomb, skeletal guardians!
An earthquake has rocked the tomb, dramatically altering its shape and utility. Many things are destroyed. Adjust the map.
Does the entire thing just sort of cant on its side?
Just flips.
Almost? Yeah, like it flips upside down. That would be interesting.
Like a true Zelda dungeon. It's now upside down. All right.
Now
Here we go.
it's
Now it's upside down. This wall has caved in.
The north passage.
This north passage has completely been destroyed. It's collapsed in on itself. So rubble.
That was my favorite passage too.
I know.
It's so much better than the
Is it
south.
is it
Such
also is
a-
it still like
Such a great passage.
in the water flush, or are we like tipped, or what do you think?
What has happened is that the earthquake particularly affected which was above the water, that was no longer maybe protected by our sea god, by our sea god's spirit. Being not under its protection, it succumbed to the elements over centuries. And then when this earthquake happened, like anything that was underwater was maybe insulated to a point, but the damage that was done to what was above has just drastic structural effect. Big Head's bookcase is destroyed.
And scattered.
Yeah, I think Big Head basically like lost a foot in this as like rock came down and just broke it off. So this is just covered over in rubble and crushed. I think many of our secret passageways are caved in. Some of them are just cut off and
Unaligned.
like they end blindly.
Yeah.
The overall, like, because we're inverted, much of what was on those top levels have just like fallen off
they
and
just
fallen
sloughed
into the
off
sea.
the sides.
Yeah, just sloughed off.
So now it's just this rougher, like
Yeah.
semi-submerged.
Yeah,
rubble patch.
we look like the kind of like remnants of like what might be described as a stone island.
Yeah.
It's a place almost where people could land. Like it's barren to be sure.
Or it's got like some growth now, like moss.
maybe it's
Yeah, that's cool.
and like an occasional
this
like
little
sea
seagulls,
creature,
Yeah.
nested there or something.
Get
like that.
out. Little interludes,
But
like a shaking.
it's
fist
like
at
what
seagulls.
is the tomb and what isn't the tomb at this point. You know,
right?
it's
No,
become
it's
very
hard
tough.
to.
I also like the idea that the earthquake caused the water to be rerouted to some degree, so that the sea that we were in, that has been shrinking over the centuries, is now more like a lake to some degree. It's really small, and so it's a cursed lake, maybe, or who knows what the deal is
Oh,
with
I
it.
like this. This is totally like the Dead Sea now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
There's less water, but the sea god's power is still
holding on a little bit.
holding on.
Yeah.
And so, who or what is our intruder?
Some of your descendants. They follow
kids.
They follow an ancient treasure map penned by your own children.
Oh, bummer.
Describe how you see yourself in them. Who among you will be the first to strike them down? Can you even bear it? For Headless, he has taken on the pose of the watchful specter, his god, which is almost like a T. And since Headless has no head, he actually makes a really great T. He has his legs come together and his body make the trunk of the T, his arms outstretched to either side of him. It's odd. He almost looks like the scales of justice or scales somehow, because he has his holy symbol hanging from one hand and a mace basically hanging down from the other hand. So he sort of looks almost like a candelabra or something like that, oddly.
Rusted Shirt has lost his bent spear somehow in the shakeup here. So the first thing he does is just try to kind of flex his bony hand to see where this thing is. He's gonna have to start playing the room like a bongo.
So, are these guys like followers of the sea god, and it's almost like an old
That's exactly what we
text,
should-
like a
yeah.
sea scroll.
I feel
that
like
drew them.
Yes, I feel like a sea scroll drew them here. Yes, that makes perfect sense. That they are worshippers of this sea god. So they might not be literal descendants of ours. Maybe they are. Maybe we'll find
There's
that
some
out.
prophecy that drew them
but
back.
they are worshippers of the sea god and found their way to this place.
Big Head goes to give you the club that he has, Rusted Shirt. His bone spurs are gnarled, and like he can't unlock his hand.
And Rusted Shirt is just kind of like grabbing it, and like there's kind of a herky-jerky back and forth where Rusted Shirt doesn't understand why he's playing this game with him.
I think that it comes loose and cracks open Big Head's hand.
No moment of introspection for Rusted Shirt. He just starts banging the club against the nearest object as fast as he can.
Crawler rises up again, very slow and weak. The two, like the mother and daughter from these previous intruders, have moldered away into skeletons themselves now.
Sure.
And so he rises up from amongst them, and their bones clatter out from under his arms, and he begins to drag himself very slowly again up the North Passage.
I feel like that these descendants are prepared for this. They are very prepared to enter this place. They don't come here lightly. They are a group of adventurers who are sort of seeking this place out. They all have worship in their hearts for this dead sea god. They are all faithful to it. And they are definitely brandishing arms and armor that we have not seen before. 314 years have passed since the last creatures we saw here. They were sort of wearing these wetsuits that had almost bioluminescent lights in them. These men and women are somewhat different. It's almost like they have an aesthetic for the sea, but they are not of the sea. They seem to be more land dwellers. And so their dress and their weapons sort of are showing that. I guess the question is, how advanced of a society are we talking about right now? We're talking about harpoon guns, more mechanical and electronic, not per se like psychic or futuristic in that way, space age. I think we're more talking about like 1970s, like sort of level of technology. So they bust in and, they have a motorboat that they bring or whatever, they have
Ski-doos.
They have ski-doos, exactly.
Oh no, they came on ski-doos. That's what that sound was.
That was that sound that woke you. And so, yeah, they They have like guns, projectile weapons, harpoons, flashlights, combat equipment. Their gear has been created, manufactured to honor their faith, which is for the sea creature.
Right.
And so they're busting their way in. They're into the northern entrance. They are using crowbars, probably winches to sort of pull out the stones.
The broken northern entrance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I think they're probably basically halfway down already since so much is sloughed off.
Yeah.
Like that's where they start.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Crawler is frustratingly trying to find a passage. Like it goes down secret passage after secret passage and finds that they're just cut off to getting to these intruders, and is just kind of like just waves of frustration as you kind of are drawing this mental map of how inaccessible the northern passages are.
Rusted Shirt is having a similarly frustrating experience because everything he hits just starts to crumble.
Oh. Big Head, a little bit more attuned to the magics of the tomb. Just start walking up one of the sides. And it would seem to be a long way around, but it's the free path. Perhaps the only remaining direction.
The intruders, the static of their walkie-talkies is ringing out sort of as they're communicating with each other and splitting off into smaller groups and smaller teams. They seem to be wanting to find as many passages as they can. They really want to explore this place and find everything that might be an artifact for them or something that's very important to them in their faith. And so they're breaking off into smaller groups of 3s and 4s. I would say that there's a dozen of these people. And so there's like maybe 3 or 4 groups of them now that are sort of doing sort of oddly the same thing that Crawler is doing, sort of following
Trying
these
to find
paths
these ways in.
to their terminuses. Yeah, trying to find the best way down.
Using the sort of attunement that Big Head is putting out, Crawler reorients themselves and starts like with a purpose. Again, really kind of sluggish, dragging, pulling themselves along the walls, working their way to what they can feel is the intrusion. That's what and the sense of this place is all askew, but they know that there's something out there and they continue to drag themselves towards that thing. And are pretty, as frustrated as they are to be trying to get to this thing, they're actually overjoyed seeing the like fractures and how things sort of crumble as they clatter through the halls.
I think Big Head, before too long, finds one of the advanced groups, stands there waiting as it does. You know, this group, as you said, is pretty alert.
Yeah.
But prepared. They start when they see Big Head, but I think that they're unafraid.
They are unafraid. They don't panic. For Big Head, these are children. I mean, these creatures can't have existed more than a decade or 2 or 3. You're not even sure anymore, but they are children. And they raise their sort of blunt objects at you. They oddly look like metallic black pieces of fruit or something, but then fire starts to jump from them and you feel your body being struck by these projectiles so tiny you don't even see them whipping through the air. You are being shot by bullets and they're smashing into your bones. I don't know what kind of damage they might be doing to you, but they're definitely hitting you about the head and body.
I think the bone spurs are getting chipped away, which is a very strange sort of sense. One of them is wearing an amulet similar to mine.
Yeah.
Unwittingly, this creates a connection that I can draw from.
Yeah.
Big Head's arm just reaches out as Big Head holds its amulet up, and blood is just gifted from one of these intruders.
And now
this
their
amulet.
voices raise in screams of panic as one of their companions is basically being sucked dry of their vital fluids.
The blood flies through the air.
Yeah, it's like being torn out of them viscerally and just sort of snaking through the air towards you. Yeah, that one just drops to the ground. Obviously dead, just totally desiccated. Its body is sort of like withering away, even like its fluids are all gone. It's
Like
just,
a Slim Jim. At the same time as that's happening, Rusted Shirt heard the patter of the gunfire, and it really set him off of his count, and he got very frustrated by
That time
that.
was really wrong.
It was such a bad tempo. He dropped his club and just started crawling up to get to one of the pathways, knowing for sure, just like Crawler, that there must be some of these intruders desecrating in one of these areas. areas, but also lost and trying to and find any sort of pathway that is recognizable.
Yeah, and crawlers work their way actually kind of like back around near the back, and where he slips in among the bent forms of the slave caste, who wear the ceremonial hoods.
Yes, the descendants of the slave caste.
And the hoods here, they're like this metallic material, and it's it's blinding and muffling.
Yeah.
And there's little like things he doesn't recognize. There's like antennae, and he hears like the crackle of people talking, where the orders are normally given to this slave caste of what to do and where to go. And he comes in amongst them and like just hunkers down and waits.
Do they carry ceremonial daggers?
No, these ones are unarmed. They just have the supplies that they're carrying on their back. Their arms are up around these supplies, and they cannot sense this thing coming in around them and within them in their midst. They're pack animals.
Oddly, though, I feel like when they talk amongst themselves, that their language is different than the others, and there are words in there that you still are able to understand.
Yeah,
Crawler.
there's like a slave can't.
Yes, exactly.
Rusted Shirt has found someone and is banging their head rhythmically against a rock at the tempo that you need.
You actually need. Yeah, I think there's pandemonium at this point as the intruders are realizing that this tomb is not empty by any stretch of the imagination. Stories are true. This place is cursed. They should never have come here. That Rusted Shirt is sort of finding victims sort of as he is walking.
Picking people off.
Yeah, what is Big Head doing with those? There seems to be more of a crowd sort of forming as Big Head is sort of standing basically in their way before they can get to the final chamber where the sarcophagus is.
They've lost their way, and they ran directly into me.
Yes.
One of them, who's sort of functionally the leader, like steps out and speaks words of worship that in an old language that I recognize, and asks to see a scroll. It's not a word of command, but it's familiar and inoffensive. I'm here to protect against the offensive and the profane, not one that speaks as our sea god. I nod assent and go to my scroll. I open the scroll and unroll it. Some of it crumbles away, but I know it by...
And I think at this point, all 6 of them that have sort of now gathered where you are all on their hands and knees. They are all trying to supplicate you somehow by chanting these words. They get the sense, you get the sense that they think that they might be having some sort of effect on you by not attacking and instead attempting to show you that they share the same faith as you.
As I said, they seem inoffensive. They are unwelcome, but they are not profane. And they seem to have made a reasonable request. I hesitate just a moment before I read them the scroll in my magical voice, surprised that they have come here so young, asking for the ritual of atonement. But I am not one to question their faith. And so I read the scroll. They ask for forgiveness. They repeat as I say. And in doing so, return their spirits to the sea from whence they came.
How does that manifest?
The physical bodies become food for the tomb sharks. The first one who finishes the chant turns to chum.
Liquefies in front of everybody else?
In a sense. Falls to pieces, and their skeleton remains standing for a moment, peering down at that fleshless body.
The skeleton!
This would be another guardian, but that is not the ritual that they asked for. The skeleton looks at me in a sort of horror as one by one its bones drop away, devoid of any connective tissue remaining. The rest shortly follow.
Awesome. They're all
Big Head gets to cleaning.
So things are falling. Like it seems like the leaders have all started to go. Like he's dealing with chattel. The crawler is just one by one killing each of these and performing his right as the first among slaves as he pushes their bodies off into the water. The first among slaves, the governess. Priest of the bent god gives these slaves over into their eternal enslavement. Ushers their souls to the feet to beneath the feet of the bent god, where they will spend eternity.
Rusted Shirt is still banging the head of the now dead adventurer against the rock, And as Crawler finishes up the job, he hears one of the adventurers scream, it's gonna kill us all. It's gonna kill us all. And Rusted Shirt has a kind of vague memory. And he realizes his name is Killisall. Killisall, that was my name. Killisall was my name in life. And he remembers a moment in the days of the sun, just sitting by the water and just playing a little drum. How there was a little fish, a carp, that would come and just open its mouth, stick its little mouth out of the water, and just kind of open it and breathe in time, and then go back, and then just like that, the moment is gone.
With that, it seems as if all the intruders have been destroyed, liquefied, or smashed, or their throats cut. There's lots to clean in the tomb. Time passes.
The Crawler only answered one, that sort of being amongst the slaves remembered that their name, because slaves are only really named by rank, was first among slaves. That was that's how they became or were recognized as the priest of the bent god. And the governess is actually a name. It's actually a name of this other cult, the sea god cult, and so it's a different moniker.
Rusted Shirt had a similar experience remembering his name, which was Killisall.
Big Head remembers, as he spoke from the scroll, that he also endured the rite of atonement.
Ooh.
But also took the oath of servitude, which left him in this form.
That's awesome. Something the skeletons are protecting is destroyed. What is it? I like the idea that we're in this 1970s technology, so there's explosives. So, yeah, maybe there's some sort of, dead man switch or something like that someone pulls, and, there's a big explosion that finally cracks that glass in between us and the water.
Yeah, so it's not broken. And also, it loosens the chains as well.
Yeah.
So now the sarcophagus dangles from from a single chain above the ocean, and there's just a spider web of cracks.
Yeah.
Throughout this window as well.
Yeah, go for it. That's awesome. And then the other thing is, a skeleton loses some bones permanently. What body part is missing? Noted on the character sheet.
Well, I already lost my foot.
You did. You self-lost your foot. Our first one is the tomb is flooded. Yeah. So because the bottom glass is cracked, all that water is now seeping in.
So we're flooded.
Yep. And last is wood, cloth, hide, horn, and unenchanted bone all turned to powder. Note this on the map.
Okay.
So everything in here that was a bone is destroyed, except for us, obviously.
So, and I'd imagine, between the flooding, just everything is deteriorated. So it's just this tomb.
It's truly wet.
We are underneath we are underneath water now. Basically, this thing is basically underneath water. An epoch is, what does it say? I think.
Did you say a millennium?
A millennium. Sorry, not.
So that is 4 minutes, and that'll put us over the time. So this will be our last encounter.
This will be our last one. Everything is turned to powder that isn't us or enchanted,
and then washed away. In the flood.
Yeah,
we've been cleansed.
This place has finally been cleansed. We'll do our last 4 minutes.
Arise and protect the tomb, skeletal guardians.
A necromancer and some mercenaries.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And remember, if it was 1970s the last time we were awake, it is now 2970.
This is someone who has come seeking the sea god and seeks this power.
Yeah.
This fabled energy. And it's a necromancer in the sense that they they have the technologies to, they believe, like clone this sea god
Yeah,
and generate
necrotechnomancer.
a new sea god, or if there's any sort of remnants or tissue remaining, find a way to replicate this creature. And they're part of a group of scientists, and he's funded by this large organization who's outfitted him with these soldiers to go plunder this tomb and find the materials.
They got fucking laser rifles and power armor and
they maybe, I don't know if things have advanced as much. Maybe like we're still. In fact, there's probably like a little bit of a dark age. Okay. So there's like their weapons are like discharge energy, like non-lethal kind of stuff for the most part, and they don't have no expectation of finding any confrontation in this.
That's right.
There's only like,
Which I like to hear.
There's legends and tall tales and silliness, but really it's like this is a Bermuda Triangle, and they found this thing, with some sensors, and they're going to check it out and they're going to plunder the shit out of it.
Makes sense.
And they have the equipment to get in there.
Yeah, where are they coming in?
The South Passage now is kind of the easy entrance for them. It's all flooded. So they're all in. Actually, the initial dudes come in with, they scuba in, they have rebreathers on, and they set up very similar, like they kind of set a bell, like a thing in there, very similar to our original plunderer. It's connected to this long tube, but with a pump up at top. It's connected to it like there's a big old ship, this kind of hydrofoil thing. And it starts to pump air down and push with pressure air out of this chamber.
Like reverse fracking to clear out the...
So they're pushing the air out of this thing. And those guys, and that's what's happening. What are you guys doing?
Headless has been in this T cross pose for hundreds of years at this point.
Yeah.
He's been immersed in water for hundreds of years at this point. His holy symbol is covered in rust. His mace, the wooden shaft of it, has expanded and swelled with the water. These are magical items, but over the years, they're definitely losing some of their integrity. He himself, or rather his bones are fine. And as he awakes, he realizes that truly his god and himself are threatened. For something becomes very clear to him in this moment where he feels as if he's being contacted by the deity that he is an avowed towards, that he's a proven holy warrior of. And he realizes why his head is no longer with him. Ooh. And the reason that is because his head was in fact the biggest head, larger than big heads.
Oh no.
And so it had to be removed and put into the sarcophagus with the god.
That was your honor.
As my honor, exactly.
Oh.
Exactly. As one of the high priests of the sea god.
Wow.
And in this moment of clarity, Headless realizes that all of that is the time is nigh. But he can't do anything else but protect this place. And so he starts making his way as almost like with resignation towards where he feels this necromancer, this energy that is new but old.
Rusted Shirt, a.k.a. Kill Us All, the timekeeper. He sees these scuba divers come in, tries to do his old tricks, but he can't make a sound. Everything's too muffled, and the speed at which you'd hit things is encumbered by water. So
And
he
its
feels,
club is no longer,
right.
It's disintegrated.
Right. It's not there, so he can't even hit his hand against anything. So he feels kind of helpless and unsure of himself as an introspective skeleton.
Big head generally just kind of steps up as usual. The amulet is on a metal chain, so it's generally unaffected, and that little circlet isn't going anywhere. The fact that he's lost his foot is definitely kind of like catching up, and so there's a little bit of stumbling and less than sure-footedness as Big Head goes to do its duty.
Oh, and just for this last scene, the crawler, with the magic sapped from him and the weight of the bone pile that he buries himself in between encounters, and the weight of the water, he's just totally encumbered and
he's
can't move.
Mm.
He still twitches in compulsion, but can't raise his dagger or himself out of the bone pile.
Miss you, Crawler.
Yeah. The scouts, the pump sort of like has cleared the first chamber, and more divers are coming down via the line. Some like gear is being brought in. Finally, like surfacing this a white wetsuit. As they step out of the water, their wetsuits just like wick off and are completely dry.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, like with a twist of a thing, expand out into these like breathable like robes that they all wear.
Mm-hmm.
And they put on, in the darkness here, they're putting on these goggle glasses so they can see. And a woman steps out, and they all the sort of soldiery guys salute her, and she pulls out some charts and a tablet that's translucent, and starts like barking orders. This is the necromancer, the necroscientist.
The necroscientist.
Call the halls, call the corridors. As I step out.
And that's actually through their comms, they hear this like so whatever psychic energy allows you to speak is all somehow interfacing with their comms.
Yeah, exactly. And they all get panicked, possibly.
Oh yeah, they're like, what? They actually think it's an error. Like, we're having some comm issues here.
And as Headless steps out, he holds up his holy symbol as holy fire begins to explode from its eyes once again and just engulfs these soldiers in flame.
They shriek and panic and start trying to clamber back out of the way of the heat in the chamber, and are losing their shit. People are yelling through their comms like, what's going on? What's happening? And you guys are actually picking up some of this now.
So weird.
Through the same interference.
Water is just dripping off the bones of Headless, off his gear. His bones have been dyed an odd color, being in this sort of powdery stone water for millennium, for centuries. And so his bones are almost like a greenish color at this point, as he sort of stepped out into the light.
Yeah, so they're losing their minds. They're like, this is the stuff of nightmares, and it's also killing them. Actually, the scientist she's the one who sort of rallies them, and they start to erect these like kind of umbrellas that push back your fire. They adjust them, and they're like looking, kind of observing you through.
It's like translucent umbrellas.
Bubble.
Yeah, that's cool.
The comms are communicating two-directionally, and Big Head hears their voices, and despite not understanding the words they speak, because he doesn't understand the words he speaks, he calls upon the amulet to grant him this speech, and he reaches out in what is like a foreign psychic tongue to himself and the other
and the initial
guardians.
sort of attempts at it blow up a couple of these comms and like just blast the heads of these guys sideways, killing a couple of these soldiers.
Yeah.
Defilers, you are unwelcome. We will stand.
I mean, I think Big Head speaks for all of us, right? Rusted Shirt has just kind of lost his mojo here. He's chomping at the bit to get in there and bash some heads in, but he doesn't really have it with his tools.
Where is he?
In this room, right? In this same room.
Mm-hmm.
Where's Wetsuit?
They're up in here.
So
this area is clear to water,
mm-hmm.
and I'd say you're like just inside there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Headless, yeah. And these guys are basically kind of like ringed around this area. They're keeping him at bay.
Feeling Rust Shirt's, or rather Killisol, the timekeeper's anxieties, I telepathically communicate, take my weapon.
Rusted Shirt looks down.
I have a mace.
At the mace, and then kind of nods his head.
Take the weapon of our god.
And his bony fingers clench around the mace. He rips it out of Headless's hands.
The time
Some of my phalanges go with it, like my fingers are sort of pulled off.
shall be kept, the sanctity preserved.
The time shall be kept.
They don't even get to the word preserved because Rusted Shirt is already playing a fucking drum solo on these guys. It's just like bom 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 bom. Teeth out.
All the soldiers are losing their minds. They're already reporting that from the depths of the crevasse, even though they thought the water was too brackish, they're these swarms of sharks. They're starting to get readings of them coming up through the water as the staccato.
Tomb sharks.
So they're actually like trying to pull the scientist lady back and calling for a full evac. This is like way outside their pay grade, and she's like not having it and is fighting them, and that is actually has her back to you as the bubble shield comes down and these soldiers start to evacuate the tomb.
Yeah, Headless just steps forward, just resolutely, step by step, holding his holy symbol out. The flames continue to just wash over all of these intruders. But for whatever reason, they don't seem to be touching the necromancer.
She's got something turned on that's protecting her for now. But the other soldiers are like diving into the water to flee. But she turns holding, like she actually has a wooden chest and she has it open and there's a twisted skull, like this weird multi-mouth fishy thing that she's like shining at you, and the fire won't come around her. The soldiers are up and out, and they're like, you see the bell like starting to get dragged back out. That's pressurizing this thing.
Rusted Shirt is certainly advancing on the necromancer with a menacing look on in his eye sockets.
Yeah, the necromancer shoots like through the comm, knows that you can hear her because you're communicating to her, and is like, I rule this tomb. I am your new god.
Rusted Shirt tries to just wallop her with the club.
Yeah, I think it just rebounds. Whatever is in this skull is like similar to what. It's not so much like, oh, it bounces. It's more like your animation stops when it gets that close to her, and your momentum is halted. So it's like a freeze.
Big Head takes its amulet, reaches it forward, and just starts moving in.
So she laughs at that, and again, you lock up. You all actually freeze. Yeah. She twists something on the skull, and like she's dropped the box at this point. She does that. But then she gets a panic, a fear, as the whole temple rocks from a explosion and another.
They're dropping
depth charges in towards the tomb. They're not taking any chances. Yeah. And you're all thrown off your feet.
Crashing to the ground. Yeah, you already have, yeah.
Easy for you.
Crashing to the ground, the chant doesn't end. Cleanse the hall, cleanse the corridors.
I think that the amulet that I've taken and held out comes loose and skitters across the floor.
As I hit the ground, rocks that are being knocked loose, similarly sized to the ones that crushed the Uni Oni all those hundreds of years ago, are starting to fall on my limbs.
Just to rain down. Ooh. The chain holding the sarcophagus to the thing in this rocking finally snaps and starts to and the sarcophagus just starts to twist and fall down through the water. And the explosions have stopped, but the whole tomb starts to tilt and lilt and sink down. At least you just see this little like sarcophagus and then this huge structure following it down deep into this crevasse, this bottomless, seemingly trench that is the base of this ocean. And the pressure
exactly
just increases and increases, and finally just like splats the scientist. She's toast. And the proximity, even though you all are not animate, the proximity to the sarcophagus is still enough that your bones are protected from the pressure as you just sink further and further down into darkness. True, like you no longer, you don't know how far you fall or how long, but your animation ends at that point. But you're still served.
For all eternity in the darkness. For eternity.
So what do we learn? Because you can...
Sure. So the question that I answered was...
1, none, 2.
Who claimed your head and why? The sea god claimed my head to honor me because I had the largest head of all of my people.
Yeah.
And so Headless didn't have a name anymore. They just became almost a vestige or a appendage of the sea god themselves.
The Crawler has, looking on at the end, like, again, still inanimate as they sink into darkness, knowing that the intruders are nearly dealt with, looks on at the mural of this bent god and laughs because they know that even though they're accursed to ever serve, this tomb and temple, this sea god, they'll never have to be subjugated eternally at the feet of the bent god because they serve a greater master.
Rusted Shirt is haunted by the sound of what seemed like the biggest drum of all time, just outside of the temple. He dreams of hitting that drum one day when eventually they all return to the surface. He holds out hope in the glimmering light of his consciousness as it fades away.
As we sink into the depths, Big Head remembers its name, Abyss.
With that, our story ends. We will return again with a new tale to spin to dare to entertain. I was one of your players, John Holt. You can find me on Twitter at LordJoho and on Instagram at board_ghost. And you can find my other podcast where we review media stuff at newtoyoushow.com. Ken, where can people find you?
You can find me, Ken Breese, on Twitter at Berlingsbeard, Berings Beard. Check out my website of the same name. And we're also doing D&D on Twitch live Wednesday nights Eastern Time at 10 p.m. Come hang out with us.
All right, Tim.
I'm Tim Rodriguez, and you can find me on the Twitzors, as we call them, at Dice Food Lodging, or on the web at a place where I make board games at www.brooklynindiegames.com.
And I'm still Chris Littler. I'm also on the Twitzors at CT Littler. If you are thinking that you want to follow up the Skeletons with a musical podcast, go to 36questions.com and you can do that.
All right. Thanks, both of you guys, for being on again. It was great
You guys
having
are awesome.
Such
I
a
love having you
pleasure.
on.
To learn more about the players and the engine in our story, please visit boardghost.com. You can attempt to pierce the veil and contact us at BoardGhostWorld on Twitter. Shout out through the ether if you have desires we can fulfill. Leave reviews and comments on iTunes, your preferred listening portal, and take a moment to subscribe so you don't miss out on the latest episodes. We'd like to thank Pat Couples for our theme song and interlude music. You can find more about Pat at patcouples.tumblr.com or on his band's website, hotelsandhighways.com. If you're not alone in the void, share our stories. The more they are consumed, the truer they become.
Dying don't agree with me.